Norma was not herself on Tuesday. I noticed it before anyone else arrived, because Norma arrived first, as she always does, and the difference was visible immediately in the way she came through the door. Not loudly, not with the forward momentum of a woman who has decided what the morning is going to be and is executing that decision with her whole body. She came in quietly, set something on the counter without announcing what it was, and sat down at the table with her coat still on. I looked at her. She said, "Don't." I told her I hadn't said anything. She said, "You were about to ask how I am in the specific way that means you've already noticed something. I can tell the difference between your regular good morning face and your physician face. You're doing the physician face." I told her I would make the coffee. She said, "Thank you." I made the coffee. She sat at the table with her coat on and looked at the windowsill, the fake succulent, the cactus, the way she sometimes looked at things when she was doing the interior work she rarely allowed to be visible. After a while, she said, "It's the 14th today." I understood immediately. Dennis had died on the November 14th, 4 years ago. Norma had never missed a beat on the other 13th November 14ths that I had known her. She had come on Tuesdays that fell on or near the date, the same way she came on every other Tuesday, with food and opinions and the full, unreduced volume of herself. I had wondered, privately, whether she processed the anniversary in a different register that I hadn't witnessed in the privacy of her own house. Now I knew. She processed it here. She just usually processed it louder. I set a cup in front of her. She said, "He died on a Tuesday. Did I ever tell you that?" I told her she hadn't. She said, "I always thought that was the worst part, that he died on a Tuesday, and I still come on Tuesdays, like the day itself has some kind of..." She stopped, looked at her coffee. Dennis would have found that meaningful. He was a man who liked patterns, found them everywhere. He would have said, "Of course you come on Tuesdays, Norma. Tuesday is the day things happen." She looked up at me. She said, "Was he right? Is Tuesday the day things happen?" I thought about the table, about what had grown around it over 11 weeks, about Carol and Sarah, and Lily and the cookies and the questions, and the letters, and the laughter. I told her I thought Dennis had been more right than he knew. She nodded slowly. She took a sip of coffee. She said, "He also thought the Browns were going to win the Super Bowl at least once before he died. He was wrong about that. So he wasn't infallible." There it was. The pivot. The real thing delivered, and then the slight sideways movement into something else. Only this time it came from the inside of grief, rather than as a deflection from it. This was Norma carrying the loss and the love at the same time, which was, I had come to understand, the only way Norma had ever known how to carry anything. I sat down across from her. We drank the coffee in the particular quiet of two people who do not require the silence to be filled. What Norma said about Dennis, and what it cost her to say it. Carol and Sarah arrived at 10:12. Carol came in first, read the room in approximately 4 seconds, with the precision of someone who has known Norma for a long time, set down her cookies without comment, and sat beside her. She said, quietly, "14th." Norma said, "14th." Carol put her hand over Norma's on the table. No words, just the hand. I watched Norma, who had in 11 weeks of Tuesdays been the steadying force for everyone else at this table, the comic relief and the blunt instrument and the deliverer of unlikely truths. I watched her receive that gesture with the specific, slightly fractured quality of someone who is not used to being on the receiving end and is not entirely sure what to do with it. She said, "I'm fine." She kept her hand there, Sarah poured herself coffee and sat down and did what Norma usually did in the moments when the conversation required space rather than contribution. She was simply present, available, not filling the silence. After a while, Norma said, "He had a specific smell. Dennis. Not cologne. He didn't wear cologne. Just him. I can't describe it, but I still smell it sometimes. In the house. 4 years and I still smell it sometimes." She said it flatly, not looking for a response, just putting it into the room. Carol said, "Richard had a sound, the way he cleared his throat in the morning. Every morning for 46 years. First thing. I used to find it irritating. Now I'd give almost anything to hear it again." Sarah said, "He hummed. When he was reading, he didn't know he did it. A very quiet hum, completely tuneless. I used to think it was distracting." She looked at her coffee. "I find myself humming sometimes. The same tuneless thing. I don't know when I started doing it." The three of them sat with that. The specific, unspeakable inventory of what the body misses about a person. Not the large things. Those are grieved in the large moments, in the ceremonies and the anniversaries and the firsts. Without them, the body's grief is smaller and more persistent and more surprising. It reaches for the smell and the sound and the tuneless hum and the 30-year habit of a morning throat clearing, and finds them gone, over and over, in the ordinary, unguarded moments when the management drops and the body simply remembers. I thought about the second cup. I thought about Margaret's voice saying my name. I thought about the particular quality of Sunday mornings when she read, and I gardened and the house held both of us in a quiet that was not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of two people together who did not need to be saying anything. I said. Margaret read aloud when she found something she thought I should hear. She'd just start reading in the middle of a silence, without preamble. I'd be doing something else, and her voice would start, and I'd stop what I was doing and listen. I paused. I've read things that I know she would have read to me, things I've come across in books or in the paper, and I read them out loud to the room, to her, I suppose, to whoever is listening. Norma said, I do that too. I tell Dennis things, out loud sometimes. Carol said, I talk to Richard every morning, before I'm fully awake. It started as automatic and now it's deliberate. It's become how I start the day. Sarah said, I told Lily she could keep doing that. Talking to Dad. Carol said, I know, she told me. Sarah said, she was so relieved. I hadn't realized how much it mattered to her that I said it was okay. We sat with that, the table in the particular mode it sometimes found. Not conversation exactly, but the shared inhabiting of something. 4 people in a kitchen on a November 14th, each carrying a shaped hole. Each talking to someone who was no longer there to answer. Each continuing the conversation on their own, with the full understanding that one-sided is not the same as over. Norma looked at the windowsill. She said, Dennis never liked plants. He thought they were work without sufficient reward. He would have hated the fake succulent on principle. He would have said, what is the point of a plant that can't die? The point of a plant is that it's alive. She said, I think he was right. I'm going to bring you a real one. Something that actually grows. I told her the plant history in this kitchen was not encouraging. She said, I'll bring something hardy. Something that can survive a physician. She said it the way she always said the things that moved you forward. With the dry affection that was her native language. The specific warmth that never announced itself as warmth, but was never anything else. The coat came off. She hung it on the back of the chair and reached for a cookie and said, Where's the child? She's late. Lily, and the first not regular question. Lily arrived at 10:40, which was later than usual, and she came in with a different energy than the previous weeks. Not the purposeful, backpack-hugging energy of a child managing an unfamiliar situation. Not the fully settled energy of someone who has decided she belongs. Something in between. Alert. She put the backpack down. She went to Bo. She said good morning to everyone in turn. Me, Carol, Sarah, and then Norma, to whom she said, "Are you okay?" Norma said, "I'm fine." Lily said, "You look like my mom looks when she's having a dentist day, but trying not to show it." Norma stared at her. Sarah said, "Lily." Norma said, "A dentist day." Lily said, "That's what I call them. The days when someone is sad about a specific person, but doesn't want to make it a whole thing." Mom has Richard days. I thought maybe you have dentist days. Norma was quiet for a moment. She said, "Yes, today is a dentist day." Lily nodded. She said, "Okay, I just wanted to know so I didn't accidentally say something unhelpful." She went back to Bo. Norma looked at me. I said nothing. She said, under her breath, "That child." Lily came to the table about 10 minutes later, earlier than usual, and sat down with the air of someone who has made a decision about timing. She said, "I have the not regular questions today." The table adjusted. She said, "Just 2. The other ones can wait." I told her to go ahead, she said. "First one, do you think Margaret would have liked who you're becoming?" The room went completely still. I looked at her. She said, "I've been thinking about it since last week. You said you were different 3 years ago. 1 cup, not okay. And you said you're okay now, a different okay. And I kept thinking about what she would think about the different okay. Whether she would recognize you, whether she would like who you are now." She said it with the straightforward clarity of someone asking a question they have genuinely been curious about, without any awareness of how precisely it had landed. I sat with it, because it was, genuinely, a question I had not asked myself in exactly those terms. I had asked whether I was honoring what Margaret had asked of me. Come home, stay home, be happy, be present. I had asked whether I was getting better at the ordinary days. I had asked the questions that were adjacent to Lily's question. I had not asked whether Margaret would have liked who I was becoming. I did not answer right away. I said, "Can I think about that one?" She said, "Yes, that's why I saved it. I knew it would take a minute." What the question actually asked, and why it took me a week. I want to tell you what happened when I sat with Lily's question, because the sitting with it is the part that matters. The immediate answer, the reflexive answer, the one that arrived in the first seconds after she asked it, was yes. Of course, yes. Margaret wanted me to come home. I came home. She wanted me to be present and to laugh and to have people at the table. I am present and I laugh, and the table has more people in it than it has had in years. She wanted me to be happy. I am. Not the way I was happy before she died. Not that specific happiness which was hers to produce, and which no one else can, but a different version of it. Real and building. The reflexive answer was yes. But Lily had not asked the reflexive question. She had asked whether Margaret would have liked who I was becoming, not whether I was following her instructions, whether she would have liked it, whether the person I was in the process of becoming was a person that the woman who knew me completely, who married me in June of 1981, and waited for me for 30 years and wrote 1 page of clear instructions in a letter before the diagnosis, whether that woman would have looked at this version of me and found it good. That is a different question. And sitting with it, honestly, required me to look at things I had been circling rather than examining. Was I becoming someone Margaret would have liked? I thought about the Tuesday table, about the people who had arrived at it and what I had given them. Carol's grief received without management. Sarah's corrected without judgment. Lily's questions answered without deflection or false certainty. Norma's dentist days witnessed without requiring her to perform a different size of them. I thought about the garden, about the 2 cups, about the reading aloud to the room. I thought about this channel, about the decision to put the things I had learned, the patterns from 40 years, the lessons from the 8 months, the contents of the letter, into words and send them somewhere. To say the things that needed to be said to people who had not yet had the circumstance that forced the saying of them. And I thought about something Margaret had said to me early in our marriage, early enough that I almost did not remember it, that it lived in the part of memory that stores the things that did not register as significant when they happened, and only declare their significance in retrospect. She had said, "The thing I love most about you is that you pay attention. You notice things. Most people don't. You do. I just wish you'd notice more of the things that are right in front of you." She said it without accusation, as an observation, as a woman who had made an accurate assessment of the person she was with and was offering it as information. "I just wish you'd notice more of the things that are right in front of you." I had been, for 40 years, a man who paid exquisite attention to everything except the most important things, to patterns in patients, to the data that predicted outcomes, to the clinical signals that others missed. And I had been simultaneously oblivious in the specific and costly way I have described across 11 videos, to the garden through the kitchen window, and the woman watching me in it from the porch, and the mornings, and the second cup, and all the things that were right in front of me. Margaret wanted me to notice the right things. Was I noticing the right things now? I looked at my kitchen, at Norma with her coat off, and a cookie, and a dentist day that she was managing in the company of people who were not requiring her to manage it alone. At Carol, whose cookies were rigid perfect now. At Sarah, whose rigidity had been softening week by week, who had given her daughter permission to talk to her grandfather and had hummed his tuneless hum without noticing. At Lily on the floor with Bo, asking the not regular questions, I was noticing, for the first time in a long time, maybe for the first time with this quality of attention, I was noticing the things that were right in front of me. I thought Margaret would have liked that. I thought she would have found it late and insufficient, and also genuine, and also exactly what she had always hoped for. And I thought she would have found it characteristic that it took me this long, and I thought she would have laughed. The real kind, the one that got away from her containment efforts and arrived fully before she could manage it. I thought she would have liked who I was becoming. I thought she had, in fact, been waiting for him. What I told Lily, and what she said back. About 20 minutes after she asked it, I said, "Lily, I've thought about your first question." She looked up. I said, "I think yes. I think she would have liked who I'm becoming. Not because I finished becoming him. I don't think that process ends until you do. But I think she would have recognized the direction. And I think the direction is the thing she would have cared about." Lily said, "What's the direction?" I said, "Toward the people who are right in front of me." She thought about this. She said, "She taught you that?" I said, "She tried for 30 years. I was a slow student." Lily said, "She sounds patient." I told her patient was one of the most accurate words I knew for Margaret. Lily said, I think she would have liked you. The current you. I think she would have been proud. She said it the way she said everything, directly, without hedging, with the specific confidence of someone who has thought about a thing and arrived at a conclusion they are prepared to stand behind. I told her that meant a great deal to me. She said, Good. I meant it too. She picked up a cookie. She said, Second, not regular question. The second, not regular question. And the 40 years that led to the answer. She took a breath. She said, Do you think you wasted your life? Sarah said, Lily. Lily said, It's an honest question. I want to know if he thinks the years when he was half somewhere else, if that means the life was wasted. Because I've been thinking about it, and I want to know what the answer is from someone who was actually there. She looked at me. She said, You don't have to answer if it's too much. I told her it was not too much. I sat with it. Did I think I had wasted my life? I want to tell you what I found when I actually looked at that question. Because I think the finding is more important than the question, and considerably more useful than the answer people might expect. The answer was no. Not because the absences weren't real. They were real. Not because the mornings and the half-presents and the 30 years of being in the house and elsewhere simultaneously were not costly. They were costly. Not because any of that was acceptable or defensible or something I would choose if I were choosing again, but because waste implies that nothing of value was produced, that the years were spent on something that returned nothing, that the life, examined honestly, contains no significant deposits, only the absence of the ones that should have been made. That is not what I found when I looked. What I found was a life that was, in significant ways, incomplete in the directions I have described at length, and also a life that contained 40 years of emergency medicine, during which more than I could ever count were helped. A residency that helped build the specialty. A department that was better for the 11 years I led it. Patients who came in at their most desperate and left having received what they needed. Families who were treated with the dignity that the situation required. Residents I trained who went on to train others. I found a daughter who became a pediatric oncologist who saves children's lives. A son who teaches high school history, and who is, by his own account and his students' accounts, the kind of teacher that students come back to visit 10 years later because he made them understand that the past was not dead, but present. I found a marriage that was incomplete in the ways I have described, and also real and durable, and full of a love that reached both directions, even when one of the directions was obscured by absence. Margaret said so. In her handwriting, on a page she wrote before she knew. I found a life, not a perfect one, not the one I would have built if I had understood at 30 what I understand at 74, but a real one, a substantial one, a life that contained loss and failure and cost alongside the things it got right, which is the only kind of life available to a human being who is actually living, rather than managing a careful performance of living. The waste would have been to arrive at 74 and be unable to see any of it clearly, to still be in the management, to be making one cup of coffee and sitting at an empty table and treating the absence as the entirety of the accounting, rather than one part of a larger and more complicated ledger. The waste would have been to not become the person that Margaret's letter asked me to become. I told Lily all of this. Not at this length. She was 9, and the morning had other things in it. But the essential version, I told her no. I did not think I had wasted my life. I thought I had spent significant portions of it badly, and I thought I had also built something real. And I thought the two things coexisted in a ledger that was, on balance, worth having been the person who lived it. She listened with her full, unpartitioned attention. When I finished, she said, "That's what I thought you'd say." I asked her why. She said, "Because you're still here." People who think their lives were wasted don't usually keep trying to fix things. You're still trying to fix things. She said it with the matter-of-fact certainty of someone reporting an observation rather than delivering a verdict. I told her that was a generous interpretation. She said, "It's an accurate one. Grandpa used to say there's a difference between generous and accurate, and they're not always the same thing." She looked at her cookie. "I think he'd want me to be both, when possible." She took a bite. She said, "I think you didn't waste it." She said it quietly. As a conclusion, the case made and the finding delivered. I told her that meant more to me than I could say. She said, "Good. That was the last not regular question. I have regular ones for next week. What happened after lunch? And what Norma did that she will never admit was significant. We stayed at the table longer than usual. The November light changed through the kitchen window. That specific fall quality, where the angle of it makes everything briefly golden before the gray reasserts. And nobody moved to leave because the room had the quality that certain Tuesdays had found. The quality of being exactly where everyone needed to be. Norma made a third pot of coffee, which she had never done before, and set it on the table without comment. This was her version of, "We're not done yet." I recognized it. Carol told a story about Richard that she had not told before. Not the engineering mind in the notebook, not the cookies. Something smaller. She said that Richard had a habit, their entire marriage, of placing his hand flat on her back when they walked through a door. Any door. Anywhere, the specific weight of a hand between the shoulder blades saying, "I'm here, you go first, I have you." She said she had not thought about it consciously for years. She said she had walked through a door last month and felt the absence of the hand so specifically that she had to stop. She said, 46 years. I never once told him that it mattered to me. I assumed he knew because I always leaned into it slightly. But I never said, "That thing you do at every door, that is one of the things I love most about you." She was quiet. She said, "He knew. I think he knew. But I wish I'd said it." Sarah said, "Did he do it everywhere? Every door?" Carol said, "Every single one. Grocery store, doctor's office, church, the door into our daughter's apartment the last time we visited." She smiled with the specific warmth of someone remembering something exact. "Every door." Lily, from the floor, said, "I'm going to remember that for when I'm married." Carol said, "What?" Lily said, "The door thing. I'm going to tell my person about the door thing so they know it matters." Carol looked at her granddaughter. She said, "Where did you come from?" Lily said, "Cleveland. You always say that." Norma said, "She came from you." It was the third time Norma had said this, and the third time Carol had received it, as if for the first time, not because she had forgotten, but because it kept being true in a new way each time it was said. Lily got up from the floor and came to the table and reached across and took Carol's hand. She said, "I'll remember the door thing for you, so it keeps going." She said it with the simplicity of someone making a practical arrangement. The door thing needed a custodian. She was volunteering. Carol looked at their joined hands. She said, "He would have loved you." Lily said, "I know. He already does." She said it with complete confidence, in the present tense, without any apology for the grammar. Carol nodded once, slowly, in the way of a woman receiving something exactly right. Norma picked up her coffee cup. She looked at the window. She said, quietly enough that I almost missed it, "Good Tuesday, Dennis." Just that. Good Tuesday, Dennis. She said it to the window and the garden, and the November light and whoever or whatever was on the other side of November. And she said it in the exact tone of a woman who is not performing anything. Not grief, not hope, not the managed presentation of a person processing loss appropriately. Just Norma talking to Dennis on a Tuesday that was his day, telling him it had been a good one. Nobody said anything. After a moment, Lily said, "It was a good Tuesday, Dr. Carver." I told her it was. She said, "I'll come back next week." I told her I'd be here. She said, "Good. I have regular questions." She hugged Carol. She waved at Norma, who waved back without looking away from the window, which was, from Norma, a form of deep feeling. She hugged Sarah. She went to Bo and said her private goodbye. She picked up her backpack. She went to the door, and she paused. She turned back. She said, "Dr. Carver, the door thing." I looked at her. She put her hand flat between her own shoulder blades in the approximate location of where a hand would rest. She said, "Somebody did that for you today. Everybody here. Every time." She dropped her hand. "Just so you know." She left. The back door closed. Bo went to the door and stood there for a moment, then came back and lay down. What I've been thinking about all week. I want to tell you what Lily's question about waste opened in me, because I think what it opened is what this video has been building toward, and because I owe you the honest version rather than the managed one. For 40 years, I was a physician who was very good at observing other people's lives, and considerably less good at inhabiting my own. I watched 400 people arrive at the end of their lives, and I documented the patterns. And I understood, with the clinical clarity of someone who has seen a thing enough times to have named it, what the final inventory looked like, and what it revealed about the choices that preceded it. And I still made the choices that produced the inventory I would have advised against. I have been living with that for 3 years, not with guilt. I have tried to set the guilt down, as Margaret asked, with the specific weight of a person who understands exactly what they were doing while they were doing it, and cannot claim ignorance as mitigation. I knew. I watched it in 400 other people. I still chose the hospital over the morning. Lily asked if I thought I had wasted my life, and I told her no. And I meant it, and the reasons I gave her were real. But there is a version of the answer that I didn't give her, because she was 9 and the morning had other things in it that I want to give you now. The no is not simple. The no does not mean the choices were acceptable. The no does not mean the cost was not paid. By Margaret, by the children and the Tuesdays I was not there for, by the relationship that had 30 years of a man who was present in the building and elsewhere in his mind. The cost was paid. It was paid by the people who loved me and waited for me, and extended the extraordinary patience of people who believe in the version of a person that hasn't fully arrived yet. The no means something different. It means that a wasted life is a life that learns nothing, that produces nothing, that arrives at the final accounting with nothing to show for the years except the accumulation of the wrong things. That is not what I have. What I have, what I am actively, currently, on these Tuesday mornings in this growing kitchen, in these words sent into the world in the hope that they reach someone who still has the ordinary time to use them. What I have is the beginning of what I should have been building the entire time. It is late. I am clear-eyed about its being late. But it is not over, and not over at 74. With a back door that people have learned to walk through without fully knocking. With an 8-year-old yellow Labrador who has learned the difference between polite tales and real ones. With a fake succulent and a cactus on the windowsill. And the knowledge that both of them arrived here through specific acts of love from specific people who decided I was worth showing up for. Not over, in these conditions, is not nothing. Not over is the beginning of the rest, and the rest, I have decided, is going to be different from the first. Not because I have resolved everything, not because the shaped hole has closed or the grief has concluded or the mourning problem has been permanently corrected, but because I know, with the specific hard-won knowledge of a man who watched it in 400 other people before he understood it in himself. I know what matters. The door thing matters. The vanilla matters. The regular questions matter, and the not regular ones matter more. The dentist days matter, and the people who sit with them without requiring them to be a different size matter. The Tuesday matters. The Tuesday is always the thing. What I want you to take from this. 3 things, as always. The first is Lily's question, which I want you to ask yourself. Would the person you love most, the one you are building this life with, or alongside, or in memory of, would they like who you are becoming? Not who you were, who you are becoming. The direction you are moving in, the choices you are making on the ordinary Tuesdays about what you notice and what you say and who you let into the kitchen. You don't have to have a clean answer. I didn't have one immediately. But ask the question and sit with it honestly, with the quality of attention Lily brought to everything she asked, and let the answer tell you what it tells you. The second is about the door things in your life. Every relationship has them. The specific, small, repeated gesture that one person makes that communicates something the words have never been used to say. The hand on the back. The vanilla measured together. The tail that keeps going. The call made for no reason except that the person wanted to hear a voice. Find yours. Name it. And then, this is the part that matters. Tell the person who does it that it matters. Not because they don't know. Because they should not have to wonder. Because the knowing without being told is the dentist card in the desk, and we have talked about that enough to understand what it costs. Tell them. The third thing is the answer to the waste question, which I want you to hold. If you are carrying the weight of years that were not what they should have been, years of half-presence or wrong priorities, or the specific failing of a person who knew better and still chose the hospital over the morning, I want you to hear what I told Lily. A wasted life is a life that learns nothing. You are learning. You are here, in this conversation, asking the questions that matter. You are on the receiving end of everything this table has worked out across 12 weeks, and you are going to do something with it. Not perfectly, not immediately, not in a straight line, but something. That is not waste. That is the rest, and the rest starts today. In the comments, I want you to tell me about your door thing, the small, repeated gesture from someone you love that you have never told them you noticed. Name it, and then go tell them. And next week, Lily said she has regular questions. I asked her to give me a preview. She thought about it for a moment. She said, one of them is about Norma. I said, what about Norma? She said, I want to know if she knows that she's a door thing. I did not have an answer for that. I told her we'd work it out by Tuesday. My name is Dr. Edward Carver. I'll see you then.